there's a lot of sacrifices, that's the word, there's a lot of sacrifices
Absolutely.
you have to make if you really want to take it to the next level.
So I didn't get a lot of support growing up.
I told him that you've told me I can reach the stars, and now you're telling me only fly as high as your gender allows.
Okay, this is not where we want you to be. We would like you to build your career somewhere else.
He did an academy, but I could not get in. I had to prove myself.
I decided to go for a simple walk around the park next to our house, and I was so angry that day. I was so angry at myself. I hated how I felt, and I was on medication that made me feel like a vegetable, honestly. And I was just so done with that feeling. And that's when I decided, you know what? I want to go and change my life.
I was just so persistent.
I just kept training and training and training. And then my dad got a phone call, and he's like, some guy from the academy was like, so we have one girl, she's really good. I think she's related to you. And then my dad's like, oh yeah, that's my daughter, yeah. Like, yeah, we accepted her, she's the only girl.
But in the end, he became my biggest ally because he realized that he was telling me no because of worry about cultural backlash.
The sacrifice and the effort we put in, it's really worth.
When you start prioritizing your dream, then you know that you're a pro.
I think we're all good to go. Thumbs up. Awesome. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to W Dubai, the PAM and What She Said event. My name is Kelly Lundberg. I'm your moderator this evening, and it is a pleasure to be here. We have got quite a lineup for you, and I'm very sure by the end of the evening, you're going to be leaving here not feeling just inspired, empowered to take action and just show up as your best self. What She Said initially launched in 2016 to celebrate fabulous women, many of which are here today as well, and the communities who are really pushing our stereotypes. W Hotels wanted to create a safe space for women to share experiences, be heard, learn from each other, and connect. And I can see a lot of phones out today. Thank you very much for sharing the pictures. Please, can you make sure that you tag in W the PAM, please, hashtag What She Said, and everyone that's sitting up here on the stage. When we go through and do our little intros, I'll get you to share your handle so everyone can tag you in and we can repost and share the conversation, because this is what this space is about. It's about being heard, it's about sharing, it's about talking, it's about being honest and having that safe space to do it. So through What She Said, W Hotels bring conversations celebrating individuality, inclusivity, and honestly tackling issues of today, which so many of you are actually already talking about, and we're going to be hearing about this evening as well. Today we're going to turn up the volume on some of those conversations, which we know will leave you feeling absolutely inspired. Today's What She Said event will celebrate women in sport, and we will hear from a panel of incredibly bold and inspiring women discussing their career highlights and how they've defied gender stereotypes and social norms to achieve great success. Female athletes really do serve as a powerful role model for young girls. They promote healthy lifestyle and participation in physical activity. And they also defy stereotypes and what bodies should actually look like. And I'm sure many of you have seen the memes on social media, skinny, not strong, or Instagram versus reality. And this is what's about, seeing the real thing and being strong and not scared to actually share it. Because it does actually show that, young girls, their value as a woman, and getting them to show up, that it's not about a number on a scale. It is about being real, and this is what we're here to celebrate today. So now to our incredible panel of powerful progressive women who I'm really honored to speak to. It was so amazing going through all your bios, and I was like, wow, I get to sit up here and be able to ask questions, and later this evening you're also going to be able to ask questions. So think deep, think what you would like to ask, because I know that you're all very open and are very happy to share as well. So we'll start with Raha, the first Saudi Arabian woman to summit Mount Everest and the 7 summits. Welcome, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Isn't that incredible?
Thank you all for coming. Thank you.
Amna Al Haddad, an Olympic weightlifter and internationally recognized keynote speaker, sports personality, writer, and mental health advocate. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me today. Thank you.
we have Amna Al Qubaisi, the first female Arab to compete in motorsport in F1 and F3, claiming her first podium win at the F4 UAE Race during the F1 GP in 2019, and the first female Arab to take part at the Formula E test in Riyadh in 2018. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Did I miss any of the wins out there? Did I get them all?
No, you got them all.
Awesome.
Today, she's going places. Today.
Awesome. And then we have Amna Al Haddad, an endurance, strength and obstacle course racing coach at Inner Fight and member of the Spartan Pro racing team. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me here.
So it's so good to have you here. Raha, I'm going to start with yourself with the question. And, you know, we've got the highs. I guess I've introduced everyone with their highs. But for me personally, especially when I'm interviewing guests on my podcast, I like to take a few steps back. And I like to know where the inspiration sort of started on. So I'm going to take you back to what I read was Mount Kilimanjaro. Yeah. First of all, how did you get to even climbing Mount Kilimanjaro? Who's here has climbed Mount Kilimanjaro?
We've got a few.
A couple?
We've got a few.
Okay, awesome. So how did you get to that point? And then how did it lead to Everest?
Okay, look, it's a very long story to go from Kilimanjaro to Everest, but I'll tell you very quickly. So during this time in my life where I decided to do something new, my family was waiting for me to find a really nice guy to get married to. Now, this age I was living is different from culture to culture, from person to person, but every woman faces this thing, whether in her career or personal life, where they expect you culturally to do a specific kind of like, you know, to get married or settle down. During that time, my parents were like, marriage, come, and I'm like, mountains. I decided to completely break the norm and left my job, put all my savings, and decided to go climb this mountain I heard was in Africa that I genuinely thought was a fruit. They told me it was Mount Kilimanjaro. I'm like, isn't that a fruit? They're like, no, it's the highest peak in Africa. And I fell in love with the idea of mountaineering. I fell in love with the idea of breaking the stereotype on my own terms, and not falling under anyone's, you know, bias or idea of what a girl, a Saudi girl, or any woman should follow. Why should I follow that specific path? So I thought I was just going to go to Kilimanjaro and then retire and find a really nice guy after that, but no. I fell in love with mountains, decided to climb all of them, the highest peak in each continent. According to my dad, you know, he always says in interviews now, he said he loves interviews. He always says, you know, my daughter, I told her no mountains, and then she climbed all of them. It's because of me she climbs. I'm like, that's not the story, Dad. So bottom line, you know, I wanted to do something different, and it manifested into mountaineering.
Oh, there's just a note on that. Your dad, and I read a quote, "Colour of your passport should not determine your capability. It all started with a tiny, quiet no from my dad."
He said, absolutely no. He's like, you want to go where? I'm like, yeah, go live in a tent for 7 days. And he's like, no.
And because so many people here would then go, okay, maybe I
Yeah.
shouldn't do it. Because we look up to our parents and think maybe they know best at some point. So what made you go, no, Dad, see you later?
Well, because he taught me that I could achieve everything I wanted. He's the one that created this little monster of wanting to achieve incredible things. So you can't create this person and then, you know, tell her you can't. I told him that you told me I can reach the stars, and now you're telling me only fly as high as your gender allows. I told him, you are the one that made me believe I can climb this mountain. It was a very unfair fight, to be honest, to throw all of his things at him. But in the end, he became my biggest ally because he realized that he was telling me no because of worry about cultural backlash. Of course, he was worried about his daughter going to a mountain, any father would, but also, what would they say? And now he's like, look at my daughter. She climbed all of these mountains. So it changed the story.
I love it, love that.
Thank you.
Well, I also want to move on to the next part for your journey, because for you it was 19 when you decided that the moment changed for you where you wanted to get into weightlifting. I mean, without going, I'm just waking up one morning and I want to get into weightlifting. How did that happen? Because it's not something that generally most young girls, shall we say, think about.
Yeah, so how it all started is when I was 19, I was actually dealing with severe depression and anxiety. So my story did not start from a place of power or wanting to like rebel against culture, which is what people assume a lot of times. It was just me dealing with my own depression and wanting to change that feeling within myself. So I decided to go for a simple walk around the park next to our house. And I was so angry that day. I was so angry at myself. I hated how I felt. And I was on medication that made me feel like a vegetable, honestly. And I was just so done with that feeling. And that's when I decided, you know what? I want to go and change my life. I went for a walk, nothing major. And from that, it led me to go to the gym and learn more about lifting and learn more about CrossFit. And a couple of years in going to the gym, just normally, I felt like there's more I could do. I felt like my body could do more. And all female gyms did not accommodate somebody who could lift heavy. Like, it was not even considered as an option for women. All the female gyms here did not have anything beyond 60 kilos. And I'm like, okay, and then what for me? That's when I decided to go and start training in a mixed gym. And that changed my perspective. It changed my abilities. It changed what I could do. And I learned more about Olympic weightlifting by going to a mixed gym. And I decided that I want to focus on this sport at first when I was around 20 years old. And then I learned about CrossFit, so I kind of derailed myself a little bit. And I started doing CrossFit for about a year, and I was the first Arab woman to compete in the regional stage in 2012, and that was a huge achievement. And that time I was actually working as a journalist. So I decided to also quit my job, similar stories, and pursue sports full time. So when I came back from that event at the Asia Regionals, which was held in Korea, I realized I was the only Arab woman there, and I didn't understand why. Why I was the only Arab woman there? And I said, you know what, let me go back home. Let me focus on a sport I can measure. Let me focus on changing the mind shift people have toward women in strength sports. So I decided to commit to Olympic weightlifting, not understanding what Olympic weightlifting was. Let me say that. And then, just kind of going through the journey and believing in myself, and that's how it all started.
I love that. How does someone go, okay, I want to go to the Olympics? Like, what's the steps that someone does? Maybe someone sitting here that has got, someone in their family that might have that dream. What's the first step you do to Olympic medals?
I would say Olympic medals may sound actually a big stretch right now. I will be honest with you. It depends where you're coming from. For example, in the UAE, we're still progressing in sports. It's still, there's a lot of facilities being built, a lot of programming being built, but I'm talking about 10 years ago when I started. That, facilities were not there. The programming was still being developed. The pushing women in sport was still not something common. Of course, it's changed now. So I would say for me, it was honestly, I had to figure every single thing out each day. There was no roadmap. There was nobody who told me, I'm going to do this A, B, C, D, and then you get to the Olympics, you will get to medal, you will get to lift heavy. It's not how it works. So normally to actually even qualify for the Olympics or train to that level, you need to be training at starting at 9 years old, not at 22, which is what I did. So I had to kind of put everything, 12 years of training in 3.5. And my body hates me for it right now because of the injuries. So I definitely would advise differently than how I did it. Because I did not have the tools and the knowledge and understanding of how to actually pursue it. And it's different for everyone, honestly, but start with finding a really good coach, and then find the federation, and then find the Olympic Committee, and then take it to that level.
And it is just proof that you can do it.
Of course.
Even though it might not be the right path, anything is possible. And I do think that is something quite exciting about 20 years living in the Middle East. Anything is possible. And that's awesome. So Amna, I'll go on to yourself, because I know that your journey in the sense of battling the sort of the stereotypical environment. So your father was into racing as well. Maybe just give us a little bit of a background as to, were you expected to go into that, or was it just because you were female, it was never an expectation?
No, not really, because my father was racing when I was around 9 years old. That's when he started. And I didn't really look into it, as I used to be doing gymnastics, and I've done it for 10 years. And he used to invite drivers and the team over for dinner, and they were always talking about racing and how passionate they were about it. And they were fighting over, who's the best driver and who's more experienced, the best tracks. So I saw how passionate they were, and I asked my dad, I was like, I want to go karting. And he was surprised. He's like, wait, what? You want to go into the sport? I'm like, yeah, I really want to try it. And I kept pushing him to start an academy for young people who would like to get into racing. And I pushed him for 3 years. And then around the age of 13, he did an academy, but I could not get in. I had to prove myself. So I went to the kart track, I did my best lap time, and I just kept training and training and training. And then my dad got a phone call, and he's like, some guy from the academy was like, so we have one girl, she's really good, I think she's related to you. And, and then my dad's like, oh yeah, that's my daughter, yeah. Like, yeah, we accepted her, she's the only girl, and out of like 50 people, I was the only girl. And they picked 7 of us, and we started to compete nationally in the karting field. So it was 7 long years of karting, and I competed nationally. I won the championships, and then I wanted a challenge. So I went to Europe, and I started to compete in Europe, and it was much more harsher because like the competition level was insane, and like they underestimated me because I came from the Middle East. So it was a very hard journey, but I made like top 5 finishes, I made it to the finals, and I enjoyed it more. And then I got the sponsorships to move into Formula 4, and I competed in the Italian F4 for 3 years. And then for my last F4 race, that's when I won it, so I finished strong for a good sponsorship. And then, yeah, we moved up to Formula 3, which I am in currently, and it's a tough journey. Like, we're competing with junior drivers from Ferrari and Red Bull and Sauber, so it's a really tough journey to be in this field.
And in that competitive space, so correct me if I'm wrong, so it's not a case of female categories and male categories, you're all competing together, is that right?
Yeah, we're all competing together as one, so.
And how do you find that? Do you feel that people underestimate you, or do you feel it gives you more of a drive, pardon the pun?
On track, like in the very beginning, I came in a category which was like between the age of 13 to 16, and they were all boys, and they were really crazy. So they would push me out, and they would fight off track. There's a lot of physical and a lot of bad talk and stuff. So in the beginning, it was very hard to get over it. But then you have to prove yourself. You need to start becoming one of them, basically. And my dad did not like that. But if you can't beat them, join them, basically. Yeah.
Many sports fans argue that women's sports compared to men's sports are rarely broadcasted. And that could mean that sort of making sports fans believe that women in sport don't have as much to offer. What can we do, what can people do to change that perception, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I think, women should support other women. They should start, praising instead of, talking bad about other women, I've witnessed a lot of girls not, supporting others, and they would give them excuses. She's doing this because of her father, she's doing that because of that. I think we should just support each other and, give more awareness.
Platforms like this, to be in this space, in this environment, and hear about it and talk about it, it's just that next step closer. Thank you for sharing your introduction to us as well. Ivana, thank you so much, and congratulations on your most recent sporting achievement. Rather than me share it, do you want to share what it is that you've just completed? Because it is quite a journey, shall we say?
Yeah, that was really a journey. I've just completed 1,366 kilometer off-road unsupported bikepacking race across the Balkans. So
oh God, guys, come on.
Can I also just add here in my notes that out of only 43 people out of 100 actually completed it?
Exactly. So officially it's now 41 out of 100.
What happened to the other 2?
They actually got disqualified and didn't follow the route. So yeah, it was a race over 4 countries. We've started in Slovenia, and we're riding through Croatia, Bosnia, and we've finished in Montenegro. So it was 10 grueling days of amazing adventure.
What were your feet like at the end of it?
Well, numb. Both feet and hands are numb because it's a lot of pressure on the hands. But to be honest, it was worth the feeling of accomplishment, and it was just an amazing adventure. I would do it anytime.
Wow, we've heard it here. What's the next thing you're signing up for then?
50-kilometer Spartan race in Morzine. It's an ultra race with obstacles in 2 weeks' time, and I'm looking forward to changing from bike to run. yeah, just to get a little bit more
And
variety.
you've always been into sport, you know, so who did you look up to, or what was the kind of inspiration? Was it people in your family, or was it magazines, or how did that all come about?
That's actually quite a funny story, because I grew up in a family where everyone is so artistic. So I have like poets and artists and painters and sculptors, and no one was actually really into sports, and they were all surprised that I'm actually so sporty and I want to do this. So I didn't get a lot of support growing up.
So this was like through school?
Through school, yeah. I was actually exposed to sports because my parents actually gave me an opportunity to try different type of sports, and I happened to be really good in actually every sport they put me in. I was very good, but they were like, okay, this is not where we want you to be. We would like you to build your career somewhere else, but I was just so persistent, I guess. And yeah, I'm happy to be where I am at the moment. However, I had one auntie that she was kind of my childhood hero.
Nice.
And she was involved into sports, and she's such a strong woman, like very tough on the outside, but very soft and caring and loving inside. And I look up to her a lot, and she was my inspiration growing up when it comes to sports.
I love that. Thank you so much, ladies. It's so nice to just get a little bit of a backstory. What I'm going to do is I've got a few more questions that I want to ask. First of all, how does the UAE support women in sport?
There's been a lot of programs created now that encourages women to participate, like, you know, Fitness 30 by 30, the government games. All of those events are really encouraging for everyone to participate and take part in, you know, creating a healthier lifestyle. At the same time, it's giving them motivation to push themselves to see where they can go in sports. And there's been this all kind of like activities that are encouraged, like in the sports council as well. You know, they have like a women department where they're creating all these events for women. I think what more needs to be done, maybe perhaps, is create a shift from just fitness to more sports culture. Because right now the fitness culture is one thing, but the sport culture is not the same thing. Because when you're an athlete, the way you train, the way you eat, the way you, how many hours you sleep, just your lifestyle is completely different.
So what's the fitness culture? What would be defined as fitness, and what would be defined as the athlete?
A sport culture.
Sport
Culture. So when you're in a fitness culture, it's very much focused on like just eating well in general, you know, being active, doing your activities, running, whatever. Even if you compete as well, it can be like a lot more simpler events. But when you're an athlete, it's a completely different world. You have to really think about the competitions you're doing. You have to think about your programming, your loading, when do you deload, taking into consideration like your minister cycle as well, and things that are very important when you're an athlete. So that kind of shift, it's one thing. Obviously, there's the event aspect of it, the sponsorship aspect of it, supporting women who wants to be athlete. There is no clear career path for women here to believe that they can pursue sports, because you're not really getting paid as an athlete. Especially as a female athlete, it's something I'm sure a lot of my fellow athletes understand, because it's not seen as a career path, it's seen mostly as a hobby. So changing that mindset in people's minds, like, you know, to create programs that can support women to actually become athletes and take their talents to the next level and compete internationally, and then, you know, pursue the Olympics.
Well, I think that's a really good point, because I'm actually going to ask each of you this. The difference between the day of going, let's say, the fitness culture to moving to the next level. Where were you the day that happened for you? What happened? You know, on that day when you decided, okay, I'm going to go pro. Whether that was pro athlete, or I'm going to take this seriously, or I'm going to kick the boys out of the racing track, or I'm going to go and run this next thing. Where were you and what were you doing, and what made you go, today's the day that it's going to change?
We were in Barcelona. Me and my mom. I badly needed anyone that climbs, Joyce, by the way, she's also an Everest summiter right here. You need triple boots, and they're not cheap. And we were in Barcelona for my brother's graduation, and my mother looked at me, she's like, what would you like to buy? There's a certain amount of money for you. And just so you know, we're going to Chanel. And before that, we can go buy you your boots. Do you want the boots, or do you want the bag?
That's a tough decision.
I was like, the boots or the bag, the boots. And these boots were the boots I needed. And I was looking at the bag, looking at the boots. I bought the boots.
Love it.
I then, years later, saved enough to buy the bag. But the idea is that moment in my life when I couldn't afford anything and my mom was offering to help me, I did not choose what I wanted. I chose what I needed, which were these boots that stuck with me. They took me to the highest mountains in the world. You don't want to smell them, but they're amazing. But this moment in my life, and I'm trying to be, to make a nice moment of a tough situation, was translated in every other decision after that. I couldn't go to many of my friends' weddings because I was training in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't afford to buy essential stuff because I needed to save enough to get the permit to climb this mountain or that mountain. When you start prioritizing your dream, then you know that you're a pro. You don't need to have a logo that says you're a pro. I never went pro. But the sense of
that mindset,
that
and the
mindset
decisions that you
of
make.
needing this is, I think, the moment, and all of us feel when you need it. That's when you really hit pro, in my book.
It's when I quit my job. I just knew that I wanted to pursue sports full on. I had no backup plan whatsoever, no idea where I'm gonna get my money from. I just knew it's something I really wanted to do. There's a lot of sacrifices, that's the word, there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make if you really want to take it to the next level. My life was waking up, eating breakfast, going training, come back, eat, take a nap, go train, come back, eat and sleep. I had no social life. I had to sacrifice a lot of things. I had to even move. I left the country for about a year and a half to train abroad, away from my family, away from my comfort zone, to pursue this goal because I truly wanted to see what is possible, to see what I can do without giving up. I wanted to see where my dedication can take me. So it's not like you can have a bad, like, if you're training like regularly, you can have a bad day and whatever. But if you're an athlete and you have a bad day, you have to push yourself. You cannot give yourself any slack. You have to get up and keep on going. And that's sometimes really not easy because you have to become your own cheerleader. You have to really push yourself. And, it's a battle. It's an internal battle. Like, do I want to continue this? Do I give up? There's a lot of talk happening internally that you have to create. And I'm sure, I think Ivana can maybe, especially with what you do, because it's on the road, hours and hours. It's you have to have really a lot of positive, I don't like to say positive mindset, but you have to have this accountability toward yourself and your goal. And I think that is something that distinguishes general training or fitness to sports.
Ivana, then we'll come to you just as your introduction. Where was that defining moment or the turning point that you knew it was pro time for you?
Well, it's pretty much the same. It's when you realize that you're actually so different than your friends and you just prioritize your training. And it's really hard sometimes because you also want to have your life and you want to see your friends. And it's hard. I had so many moments when my friends were like, well, is it worth? Well, I asked my question as well so many times. But I think it is. It makes me so extremely happy. And as you said, I just want to go out there and try my best and see where can I get? How much can I achieve? I want to push my limits and I want to push my boundaries. And I think the sacrifice and the effort we put in, it's really worth. And you understand me. Maybe other people cannot relate, but it's exactly the same moment.
Yeah. Amna, where was it for you? Was it the day the phone call came in with the academy, or was it?
No, I started off as a hobby, but then when I realized, as they said, social life and trying to balance my education with my sport, that's when I realized, it's getting more professional and competing in good teams and competing in Europe. That's when I'm okay, I'm actually making a career out of this. Sports is expensive. It's very difficult to make a career out of it. So I've just realized I went pro when I had to balance between my education and my sport, because my father was very strict with my education. He's like, if you don't do well in school, you're not racing at all. So yeah.
That was a motive in itself.
Yeah, that was pushing, okay, I gotta go pro now.
But there's so many things as a business owner. I see that ultimately what you're doing in sports is your business. It's that sort of, you have trading times with your friends to, I've done that very same thing with business. This is your business, it's just in a slightly different space.
It's a company of one.
Yeah.
I always say that I'm running a company of one.
And it's the same with the finances, as well. When you're starting your business, it's tough times, and it's the same when you're going into your sport.
You put everything in it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what are some of the main qualities required to succeed in this sort of sporting world? So we've talked about, a little bit about grit and determination and being there on the days when you just don't want to be. What other qualities, maybe for those that are sitting here thinking, might have been unexpected to you that you needed to find?
For me, was self-belief, just building confidence in myself that actually I can be an athlete that I dream of, that I imagine. So I think just building that self-confidence and believing in myself deeply that I can do that and just kind of break the boundaries and, I don't know, I'd like to say beat the boys and just be on top of the podium, like no matter what. It's just that confidence, and it takes time to build that, just to deeply believe in yourself that you can do it.
What are some of the things that you did? Because I actually think there's probably people here in the audience that, you know, are maybe feeling a little bit that they don't have the confidence maybe to go to the gym or to pursue their dreams. What have been some of the things that maybe you've done to help build that confidence?
Well, I think training itself helped me build the confidence. So better you get, more confident you get, and more you're racing, more you kind of see like, okay, but that's not that bad. I'm actually good. And just try to remind yourself, no matter what, no matter how scared you are, no matter how race or event is intimidating, you know how hard you worked and what effort you put in. Actually,